So, my future mother-in-law corners me at our engagement party. Her voice was this low, venomous hiss. "You're nothing but trash," she spat, her eyes raking over my simple dress with total disdain. A pretty little gold digger latching onto my son for a free ride. She leaned in so close I could smell her suffocatingly expensive perfume. Let me be clear. You will never be good enough for this family. The crazy part? She had no clue that her own son, the man I was about to marry, secretly owned the very company she and her husband were desperately begging for a job at. And I was about to become the one thing she truly worshipped: powerful. It all started so innocently. I met Liam at a local coffee shop. He was reading some worn-out paperback, and he just had the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. There was absolutely nothing about him that screamed wealthy. He drove a modest car, lived in a simple apartment, and his idea of a perfect date night was a walk in the park and take-out pizza. He told me he was a consultant, which was a vague enough title that I never really pushed him on it. I was a project manager for a small nonprofit. I didn't have much, but I loved my work and I was happy. And with Liam, I was even happier. When I finally met his parents, Margaret and Richard, the chill in the air was immediate. They lived in this huge, pristine house in the suburbs that felt more like a museum than a home. Every single surface was gleaming, every cushion was perfectly plumped. They greeted me with these tight, thin smiles that didn't come anywhere near their eyes. During that first dinner, they didn't ask about my job or what I was passionate about. Nope. They asked where I went to school, what my parents did, and what kind of car I drove. My answers were, apparently, all wrong. The conversation pretty quickly turned to their one and only obsession, a company called Aura Innovations. It's the most prestigious tech firm in the country, Richard boasted, puffing out his chest. To work at Aura is to have truly made it. The benefits, the prestige, it's the dream. Margaret chimed in, her eyes gleaming with this kind of desperate hunger. We've both submitted our applications, of course. For management track positions, our recruiter says our chances are excellent. They only take the best and the brightest, you see. They talked about Aura Innovations like it was a kingdom, not a workplace. It was the absolute pinnacle of success, the ultimate validation of a person's worth. I remember Liam just sitting there quietly, this strange, unreadable look on his face as his parents mapped out their entire future around a company they didn't even work for yet. I thought it was a little weird, but I just brushed it off as a family quirk. I had no idea it was the foundation for the humiliation they were planning for me. That initial coldness from Margaret and Richard quickly morphed into open contempt. It started with these backhanded compliments that were really just insults. "It's so sweet that you have your little charity job, Clara," Margaret would say, patting my hand. "It must be fulfilling to have a hobby before you settle down and have children." It only got worse from there. They criticized my clothes, my manners, my background. They'd forget to include me in family photos or hold entire conversations around me as if I wasn't even in the room. To them, I was just a temporary problem, a low-class blemish on their son's otherwise perfect life. The breaking point came during a Sunday dinner. Liam had stepped out to take a call, leaving me completely alone with them. Richard put down his fork and looked at me, his face a mask of disappointment. "Clara, let's be frank. We don't understand what Liam sees in you. You bring nothing to the table. No connections, no wealth, no ambition." "He's not a charity case, dear," Margaret added, her voice just dripping with condescension. "Our son is destined for greatness. He needs a partner who can elevate him, not someone who will drag him down into mediocrity. You're a gold digger, plain and simple, and we won't stand by and watch you ruin his life." Tears were pricking my eyes, but I refused to let them see me cry. I just sat there, my hands clenched in my lap, taking the hits. When Liam came back, he could immediately feel the tension. He looked from his parents' smug faces to my pale one. Later that night, he held me while I finally cried. "I'm so sorry, Clara," he whispered, his voice thick with some emotion I couldn't quite place. "Please, just trust me. There's a reason I don't fight them on this. Their own ambition, their own words. They will be their downfall. I promise you, it will all make sense soon." His words were cryptic, but the conviction in his voice gave me a sliver of hope to hang on to. Our wedding day was beautiful, held at a rustic botanical garden that felt like a world away from his parents' sterile mansion. Of course, Margaret and Richard found things to complain about. The flowers were too simple, the music too folksy, the venue too outdoorsy. They floated through the party with an air of martyrdom, making sure everyone knew this wasn't the wedding they would have chosen. Then, during the reception, I saw them both go stiff. They were staring at a distinguished, silver-haired man who had just walked in. "Oh my God," Margaret whispered, grabbing Richard's arm. "That's David Harrison. He's the CEO of Aura Innovations." They watched, totally starstruck, as Mr. Harrison scanned the room. They straightened their clothes, getting ready to pounce, to finally get their audience with the king of their dream castle. But Mr. Harrison's eyes landed on our table, and he broke into this wide, warm smile. He walked directly toward us, completely ignoring Margaret and Richard, who were practically vibrating with anticipation. He bypassed them without a second glance, came straight to Liam and clapped him on the shoulder. "Liam, my boy, you clean up nicely," he said with a booming laugh. He then turned to me, taking my hand gently. "And you must be the incredible Clara. Liam hasn't stopped talking about you for a year. It is an absolute honor to finally meet you. The entire board sends their love and warmest congratulations to you both." He gave me a subtle, knowing wink. I saw Margaret and Richard out of the corner of my eye. They were just frozen, their faces a comical mix of shock and total confusion. Why was the CEO of Aura Innovations acting like Liam's favorite uncle? And why did he know my name? You could see the gears turning, but they just couldn't solve the puzzle. If you can't wait to see what happens next, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and trust me, you are going to want to stick around for the moment their entire world comes crashing down. A little later at the reception, I saw them make their move. Margaret and Richard cornered Mr. Harrison near the bar, their fake smiles plastered on. "Mr. Harrison, what a pleasure." "We are Richard and Margaret, Liam's parents," Richard said, sticking out a hand that Mr. Harrison shook politely. "We are just such tremendous admirers of your work at Aura," Margaret gushed. "The innovation, the culture, it's just unparalleled. In fact, we've both applied for management positions. We're very hopeful." Mr. Harrison looked politely confused and glanced over at Liam, who had seen the whole thing coming. A slow smile spread across my husband's face. "It's time," he whispered to me. He took my hand and we walked over. "Mom, Dad," Liam said. His voice was perfectly calm, but it cut right through the reception chatter. "I'm glad you're getting to know David. We were just telling him how much we want to work at Aura," Margaret said, a little too eagerly. "About that," Liam continued, his eyes locking onto theirs, "there's something you should probably understand about my job. About what I do." He paused, letting the moment hang in the air, just savoring it. "David here is the CEO, that's true. He runs the day-to-day operations and reports to the board of directors. And as the founder and majority shareholder of Aura Innovations," Liam's voice dropped, becoming firm and absolute, "the board reports to me." Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. The color just drained from Margaret's face. Richard's jaw went slack. The smug superiority they had worn like a second skin for years just dissolved in an instant, replaced by pure, unfiltered horror. You own Aura?" Richard stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Liam nodded slowly. "I do. I founded it in my dorm room 15 years ago. I prefer to stay out of the spotlight for obvious reasons. He then squeezed my hand and looked at his parents, his eyes as cold as ice. And Clara, as my wife and partner in everything, is now the second largest shareholder in the company. He let that sink in. He had just told them that the woman they called trash and a gold digger held more power in her little finger than they had ever dreamed of. I watched Margaret's eyes dart to me. I could see every single insult she'd ever thrown at me flashing behind her pupils. The shame, the regret, the terror was all there. She opened her mouth and a stream of babbling apologies started to pour out. Clara, we had no idea. We are so sorry. We can't believe. Richard just stood there, speechless, looking like his whole world had just been obliterated. Liam held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it," he said, his voice completely empty of warmth. "HR flagged both of your applications for my personal review last week. They noted you were highly motivated. After conducting a thorough review of your character, I've made my decision." He looked them both square in the eye. "Your applications have been denied. You do not fit the culture at Aura Innovations. We value integrity, humility, and respect. You have demonstrated none of those things. Don't bother applying again." He then turned his back on them completely, his focus entirely on me. "Shall we have our first dance, my love?" he asked, his eyes soft again. As he led me to the dance floor, I glanced back at his parents. They were just standing there, abandoned and humiliated, as their hero, David Harrison, gave them a look of profound disappointment before walking away. They were utterly and publicly ruined. That was the last time we ever saw them. We didn't invite them into our new life, and they never tried to force their way in. The story of what happened at the wedding spread through their social circle like wildfire. Being publicly rejected by the owner of the company they worshipped was basically a social death sentence. We heard from a cousin that they had to sell that big, pristine house and move to a smaller town to escape the shame. As for us, we've never been happier. I took an active role on the board for Aura's philanthropic foundation, channeling the company's massive resources into the causes I'd spent my life fighting for. That small nonprofit I used to work for, it now has a multi-million-dollar grant secured by me. I'm not just helping anymore. I'm creating real, large-scale change. Liam and I built a life based on the same things that brought us together in that coffee shop: kindness, respect, and love. His wealth was never the point, it was just a tool. And in the end, it was a tool that served up the most perfect, poetic justice I could have ever imagined. They made the mistake of judging a person's worth by their bank account. They tried to tear me down because they didn't like where I came from, never realizing they were messing with the one person my husband valued most. And in the end, they were the ones who got thrown out.